So it's a Monday morning, right? You're ready to go to work just like most of the rest of us in the world, and you wake up and you have this really good feeling, right? For about the first 1 to 2 minutes, some people a little bit more, some people a little bit less, when you first wake up, where you just had a great sleep, none of the problems of the world or within your own personal life are bothering you at that very moment, and there's that little space in between, when you finally come to full consciousness and, the weight of all your responsibilities and unfortunate incidences come onto you just like everyone, I would dare to argue. And then there's that moment where you snap and say, okay, Monday morning, time to get to work. Part of my English here, but you're kind of just like, holy shit, fuck this, right? Now, that little 2 to 3 minute gap where you don't feel anything except for purity and happiness is exactly, in pure theory, how most of us are supposed to feel, but again, because of a handful of different apparatuses that are both natural and artificial, thanks to humans and extraterrestrials, this is what is causing some of that mass suppression. However, this is only one part of the episode. Now, before I get into all this, I just wanted to say that we do have a Patreon, and it does help support the show. I will be getting to the shoutouts this coming weekend, moving into next week, just because there's so many. I need to take a little bit of time to catch up. But anyways, let's jump right into it. So, the white helmets using Dead Sea Scrolls to infuse roundworm convergences. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Let's break this down from a very fundamental level, okay? Let's take a look at Cornell University at arxiv.org. Transdimensional physics and inflation. Within the framework of a 5-dimensional brain world with a stabilized radion, we compute the cosmological perturbations generated during inflation and show that perturbations are a powerful tool to probe the physics of extra dimensions. While we find that the power spectrum of scalar perturbations is unchanged, we show that the existence of the 5th dimension is imprinted on the spectrum of gravitational waves generated during inflation, end quote. Now, before I go on to simplify this, essentially, this is what we would classify as transdimensional thought, if you will, or transdimensional physics in many different ways. And what does that mean? That means that a lot of these extraterrestrials can actually engage directly, not just communicate, but engage directly with thought. Now, you might be saying, okay, Dave, how does that make any sense? Because the whole concept of consciousness and thought, and it's been a very large philosophical issue for many thousands of years for human beings, so to speak, right? Allegedly. Now, what happens if that can actually be manifested into a holographic form of a substrate, if you will, with some of the different materials that we have previously covered in the previous public episodes, in addition to the members episodes, that may in fact translate into a product that could be the manifestation of a way in which we could perceive thought. Now, let's take that and scale that up to the extraterrestrial level. That is not to say that the extraterrestrials are at the point, okay, folks, in which they're at the top of the top just because of how advanced they are. They have made a point, whether they're benevolent, they're good, bad, or neutral, or what have you, to a lot of secret societies and secret government groups, if you will, that they are still learning just like we are, but of course they are substantially thousands, hundreds of thousands, and in some cases millions of years ahead of where we are, at least on a public level. Now, let's take a look at this article right here, just to get a little bit more of an understanding, if you will. So take a look at this. This is according to TexasTribune.org. Texas grid operator urges electricity conservation as many power generators are unexpectedly offline and temperatures rise. The Electric Reliability Council of Texas says a large number of power plants are offline, but it could not provide details as to what may be causing the very concerning number of outages. At the same time, the state is experiencing near record demand for electricity in June. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you take a look at some of the public documents, that I will be elaborating on in the members episodes, just because I have to be careful of what I present publicly here, what we're going to find is that a lot of these power grid sudden shortages or outages are not being explained whatsoever. There are constant regurgitations of requests attempting to be filled so that there is no way in which some type of altercation could occur where some official government regulator will say, oh, what's going on here, right? It's another form of a cover-up. Now, the next thing I want you to take a look at here is this right here. This is Associated Press, by the way, mainstream media website. We can argue they got contracts with the CIA and all that, but let's just take a look. Jet lag soon to be obsolete. Blackrock Microsystems joins team at Northwestern University to develop living pharmacy using device to control circadian clock. All right, let's take a look. Blackrock Microsystems, a privately held company that provides enabling tools for neuroscience, neural engineering, and neuroprosthetics research worldwide, partnered with a team of interdisciplinary researchers at Northwestern University who signed a contract with the Defense Advanced Research Projects agency, DARPA. Again, the second you see that, not just because it's a government acronym, but the second you see any type of, the words freedom, democracy, advancement, research, I'm telling you, folks, run, because it's not good. And some of you might be saying, Dave, why do you say that? Well, folks, we can't trust them to begin with. It's true, right? So let's carry on here. To develop a wireless, fully implantable device that can shift the body's circadian clock, having the time it takes to recover from disrupted sleep/wake cycles. The device powers what will be considered a living pharmacy, a personalized implant that gives the body exactly what it needs at a precise time, called N-Train, normalizing timing of rhythms across internal networks of circadian clocks. The project is a part of the Advanced Acclimation and Protection Tool for Environmental Readiness, or the Adapter program, which is DARPA's new initiative to help address the quote-unquote challenges, and I'm throwing the air quotes in there myself, of travel, jet lag, fatigue, gastrointestinal issues, and weakened immune response, end quote. Now, we need to look at a much bigger apparatus here, which is what? Blackrock. Everybody know what Blackrock is? Because for those who don't know, I would like to very, very strongly point this out. Now, again, I want to be very careful with my words here, because Blackrock is heavily influenced by a lot of the Mossad, the CIA, and the MI6, but very heavily the Mossad. Do you know the companies that Blackrock owns? This is not, the Associated Press is trying to make it seem like, oh, it's just this company, this investment firm, it uses big words and things like that in order to deceive the public, so to make the public think that, people who do investment financing and different forms of, hedge fund investments and different forms of all of that are far superior in intelligence to the everyday person. That's another con of the overall concept of Wall Street, which is another, I guess you could say mental perplexion or deception, if you will, which is that they use big jargon to make people think that those on Wall Street are really, smarter than everybody else when they're really not. But anyways, that's a different story. Let's take a look at Blackrock right here. Look at all of the stocks held by Blackrock, okay, folks? And this is, by the way, this is not like anything new. This is from holdingschannel.com. These, which can show all the stocks that are held by public companies, all right, allegedly. Anyways, let's take a look at the public side of it. What does Blackrock own in terms of investments? Apple Incorporated, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Alphabet, Tesla, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan Chase & Co., Berkshire Hathaway, Visa, United Health Group, MasterCard, Nvidia, ExxonMobil, Netflix, Coca-Cola, AT&T, PepsiCo, Walmart, McDonald's. I mean, look, I can keep Home Depot, Procter & Gamble, Disney Walt Corporation, Intel, all of this. Pfizer, Nike. Okay, anyways, you know what this is basically saying right here? The BlackRock arguably has a vast amount of control and influence in corporate America. Because there are companies missing, yes, but especially those that are in the West, folks, Look at this. McDonald's too, again, Citigroup. These are the exact companies that you would have quote-unquote holdings in if you wanted to influence society. Now, why would you want to influence society? What does this have to do with extraterrestrials? Well, take a look at this right here, folks. I know you might be saying, Dave, whoa, but just bear with me. RichmondGlobe.com. Prehistoric owl successfully cloned in Brazil. Pecks out scientists' eyeballs. Now, take a look at this right here. When we think of cloning, most of us think of human cloning or things, or like, the Dolly sheep cloned in Britain and what have you. Now, look at this. A prehistoric owl known as the Ornimegillonyx, hopefully I said that right, but after a successful cloning process over some years, the owls were created hugely unstable and aggressive. In the end, one of the scientists working on the project was attacked and lost both of his eyes. Now, this is a prehistoric owl that allegedly is, a very large size that scientists ended up cloning, that ended up being covered up by the mainstream media, if you will. And a lot of people might be saying, Dave, we would have heard about it if this happened. Well, folks, I'm going to give you another example later in this episode to just show you exactly what I mean. But anyways, this exact cloning right here uses a particular method, and I'm going to show you right here exactly what we're finding here from phys.org, not exactly from phys.org, but this is a reference to it. So let's take a look at this right here. Convergent mechanism of aging discovered. Scientists started their research in the roundworm elegans, a well-known model organism for research. We studied the metabolic products of several long-lived worm lines. Our analysis revealed that, among other things, we observed clear changes in the metabolites or metabolites and enzymes of the folate cycle in all worm lines. Since folate metabolism plays a major role in human health, we wanted to further pursue its role in longevity, explains Andrea Annable, lead author of the study. Now, end quote. here's the thing about all of this, folks. What we're finding here is that if we take a look at this article from EurekaAlert.com, where it says, researchers translate a bird's brain activity into song, people are not putting together the big picture here, which is that as each thought is emitted, it is paralleled with that of a frequential transparency of a holographic substrate that is not able to be viewed within the spectrum of our own vision, at least from a human perspective. Now, allegedly, amongst the 57, Nordic species that look like us, and those are just the ones that look like us, that can see in the dark and things like that, they can detect such occurrences. Now, you might be saying, Dave, why do you bring this up? What does this have to do with the owl? Well, the owl was experimented using, right over here, the roundworm DNA and roundworm genetics. But of course, they will never admit that in a mainstream media article. And the overall concept here is that in pure theory, if you can control, again, with the previous article we looked at as well, with, the Blackrock trying to invest in a certain company that's partnered with DARPA to help the sleep cycle be broken so that people don't feel tired, they don't have any problems with their body, they don't experience jet lag. These are all pieces, to be placed together in order to manifest a very large extraterrestrial / human animal hybrid. Now, you might be saying, Dave, this is just stuff that you're making up. Well, I'll explain something to you, and I'll explain how I know this. Take a look at this right here. SputnikNews.com. U.S. watchdog. Pentagon cannot verify if $2 billion in equipment reached Iraq. Now, the first thing you might say, some of you, is, look, this is a Russian-based website. Granted, it is. Now, yes, do Russian, Sputnik News, RT, do they obviously favor the Russian Federation and the Russian country? Absolutely. But their track record has actually been known very well to be the reporting on certain instances within the West and Europe has been known to be reporting very, very substantially well. So let's take a look at this. This is in 2017, by the way. The U.S. Government Accountability Office, GAO, revealed in a report on Thursday that the Pentagon is unaware whether $2 billion worth of military equipment sent to Iraq has ever reached its final destination. Now, you know what's equally as interesting, too? Some of that money from the Pentagon, you might not actually believe this, but it is in fact the case. Some of that money was directed to Jackhead Reserve in Manitoba. Interestingly enough, some of that money was also directed to Native Indian schools, which, again, we'll find very recently for those keeping up with Canadian news, which was also a worldwide thing. 215 children were recently found in a residential school. Like the corpses of these children were buried underground. But let's take a look at this right here. MysteriousUniverse.org, 2015, UFO crash reported in Manitoba, denied by Canadian forces. Hundreds, and I know people personally who witnessed this, folks, or at least someone who knows others that witnessed this at the very least, folks. Hundreds of people witnessed this, and the military, from first-hand accounts, the military removed all of their cell phones immediately. Everything was removed right away, and it was all covered up very quickly. Some pictures did in fact leak, but right now I'm going to be putting up some pictures of what the military cover-up looked like. And then there's a screenshot right here after we show the military pictures. And this is a Facebook post from someone saying they told us we have 1 hour to evacuate. That's all I'm allowed to say. This is a picture of the crash. Now, you might be saying, Dave, that doesn't look like a crash. Let me explain to you, folks. The craft was a pyramid-shaped craft, and this is going to come together full circle. This, you see how this crashed right here? So this is the crash. And then this is the way, obviously when it crashes, it's going to go a little bit down into the ground in the snow. And then there is the pyramid-shaped UFO craft. Now, someone has made a drawing to sort of depict a bit more of an accurate representation, if you will. But the reason why I bring this up, folks, is because that pyramid craft had a certain amount of technology that was then acquired by Blackrock, which was the money that was funneled to Iraq looking for the Stargate, right? And here's the thing. The Venusians, as thanks to our friends Rumors of Instinct, but as well as my own research, has been able to substantiate that the Venusians, which are responsible for overseeing humanity, if you will, as part of the Galactic Federation and the secret space program and all that, were not happy that we as a species, not necessarily as a subspecies nation, as they would define us as, but we as a species discovered the Stargate in Iraq. They were very, very disappointed in that. Now, which species specifically, or a subspecies of the Venusians, could we be looking at here? We could be looking at, let's take a look at Aryan Nordic pinealiens.blogspot.com. Excuse me, it's quite a long title. We could be looking at the particular species that is referred to as the Denaric race, and the Denaric race tends to have people that look like this, humanoid-based people as we would generally refer to them, but you can see clearly something is off. You know, the picture of this woman looks human. If you walked by her, you wouldn't really notice, especially if she had her hair down, but I mean, in this particular case here, this is very clear and evident, right? Now, the Denaric race, all right, let's take a look here, is tall, with an average height of about 1.73 meters for the men, and gives an impression of sturdy slenderness. Like the foregoing, it has relatively long legs, while on the other hand, the length of the arm in the Denaric race seems to be relatively less than in the other European races, or alien European races. The neck seems to be somewhat thicker than in the Nordic race. You know what? End quote. Before I go on, I want to make something very clear. If we go back here, folks, and we take a look at this right here, the roundworm. Do you want to know what the roundworm studying in this particular study, according to phys.org, was focused on? The neck. Why would you need the neck? Why is this so coincidental? Let's be honest with ourselves here, folks. I mean, we're taking all the data points and we're putting them together almost in a way that's a little bit, I guess you could say, risky, if you will. Now, let's go back to the Texas power grid for a second. Why is that the case? In order for roundworms to be experimented on, what do you need? Quantum computers, right? Hasn't there been a sudden, all of a concern that certain countries would be outputting more power due to the utilization of quantum computers than the other way around, right? And on top of that, this is an overall aspect of the fear apparatus that we see that is coming slowly and slowly to fruition. So, and how do I know that? Well, let's take a look at this right here. NewYorkPost.com, June 16th. This was literally 2 days ago, 48 hours ago. UFOs could threaten U.S. security, polls say, or politicians say after Capitol Hill briefing. Interesting, isn't it? Notice how all of a sudden there's this feeling of, again, many will say Project Bluebeam, or, generally speaking, that whole concept of fear and all that. But notice how this is all formulating together. They don't want us to look back to articles from 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's why the CIA has such a high percentage of ownership within Google. And a lot of people don't even know, but Google Earth was a CIA program called Keyhole, and then it merged with Google. Not a lot of people know this. And you might be saying, Dave, why do you bring this up? Well, folks, it all has to do with, again, of course, the Dead Sea Scrolls. But what we're going to notice here is that, and I quote from bibliothecaplagues.net, news items are circulating about how hints and insights contained in the famous Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in caves near the ancient site of Qumran can be found in the Bible. In other words, certain ideas in the scrolls also appear in the New Testament, meaning, of course, the impression of Christianity as a divine revelation appearing whole cloth miraculously, from the very finger of God is clearly erroneous. All right, but take a look at this right here. Hints of the scrolls in the Bible. To understand how the Dead Sea Scrolls influenced early Christianity, just turn to the New Testament. Now, before I go on, I just want to make something very clear. I don't mean any disrespect to those that have a strong Christian faith or anything like this. I want to make it very, very clear. However, the Dead Sea Scrolls seem to be emitting, and again, I can go on and on with this, but there's just so much to read here. They seem to be emitting a certain frequency very similar to that of what we see here at eurekalert.org, where researchers translate a bird's brain activity into a song. Because take a look here, it is possible to recreate a bird's song by reading only its brain activity, shows a first proof of concept study from the University of California, San Diego. Interesting that the University of California's biggest funder is the Rand Corporation, as well. But ultimately, folks, what we're going to find here too is that, does this not sound like something else that we've covered many times over? Project Looking Glass. Why do you need to see something reenacted in real time if all you need are its frequencies? I mean, it's right here, is it not? Right? So I would like you folks to let me know what you think, because there's a lot here. We got the frequencies from the Dead Scrolls, we have the roundworms, we have the different genetic mutations, we have the different Nordic races, we have, the trans-dimensional physics, right? All of this to manifest for the larger collective consciousness of the New World Order. But here's the thing, the different factions that are comprising of the New World Order are currently in a battle, and currently, unfortunately, the negative ones seem to be winning because of the curation and dissemination of a lot of the negative propaganda that seems to be occurring that will only suppress us even more frequentially. So let me know what you all think, and we'll catch you all very, very soon. Cheers.